You're listening to a DM podcast.
Welcome to Over the Back Fence. I'm Di Edwards.
I'm Nicola Dale, and we're buddies of nearly 4 decades. And yes, we actually do happen to share a back fence.
We do. We love parties, people, inspirational stories, and honestly, making the most out of life.
So join us as we open our hearts, share our stories, and hear from some of the most inspirational people in the world, and have a laugh along the way.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Hey everyone, this is Sam, the producer here at Over the Back Fence. I wanted to jump on and let you know that there is a content warning for this episode with Dr. Frank Anderson. In this chat, we talk about trauma, and in the context of that, there is a brief moment in this interview where we discuss the issue of suicide. So if this is a sensitive topic for you or something that you don't feel up to hearing today, then please feel free to skip this episode and come back to it at another time when you're feeling more ready. And of course, if you have any mental health struggles, then the number for Lifeline is in our show notes. We hope that you get as much from this powerful episode with Dr. Frank Anderson as we did.
Oh my God, Nicola. Dr. Frank Anderson, it's going to take me a while to come down from that interview. I mean, I was in tears. Ultimately, he broke down my fear of what the word trauma is all about, because I hear the word trauma and it frightens me. I think of an accident. I think of someone being rushed in on a trolley to emergency at a hospital. But he went, as you said trauma can actually be changed into a word called overwhelming,
yeah.
And he broke all that down. And I now see trauma. Well, he was talking about 70% of the population has experienced some form of trauma, but he broke down the intensity for me of what that is.
And I love hearing that from you, and sort of being, your bestie for so long. I didn't know you even had that response to the word of trauma. And we're sort of saying is also the other thing, which talk about a takeaway from that interview was just absolutely incredible. It's going to sit with me forever, really, was listen to your responses, your reactions and your responses and their signals. So, and then also the good news is too that everything can be healed. For me, that was a huge takeaway. And for you now going, wow, you did have that response to that word trauma, but now it's softened it. And it's everybody experience. It's 70%. I think it's 100%. Everybody is students of life and living on planet Earth. We all feel different things at different stages. And it's like, listening to our responses and going, what you said too, it's a gut feeling.
Totally.
So it was an incredible interview. I hope that you all loved it like
really
we
ultimately
did.
sharing the experience rather than just the story and the fluff.
Yeah, healing first too, healing and then forgiveness if you choose to, but heal first.
Yes.
And and so now I love it too that he's making it on a platform that he's doing TV shows and he's doing it that you don't have to go and sit in the therapist's couch now. And there are tools of way of doing it and writing it out. You can still be by yourself, but writing it out or meditating and even dreams. Well, it just covered so much, didn't it?
I'm a bit floored, actually. And honestly, Nick and I are talking around the back of that interview. And, I'll take a lot of that with me for life. Life lessons.
Life lessons and, well.
And I think you nailed it with the way to acknowledge it, because there's a lot of deep-seated trauma that people either, don't know about or don't acknowledge or bring to the fore, but it's about how you respond or react to people. And it was about the reaction. If you're reacting, well, that's the body telling you, hey, you're holding on to something.
Yeah. Well, look, we love all our interviews with people. That was an absolutely extra special one. All the way from the USA.
Yeah.
We're really fortunate.
Enjoy, guys.
Enjoy.
We loved it.
We loved it. It's exciting. Back for another week. And we have got somebody extra special on today, Didi.
We sure do.
We have got Dr. Frank Anderson, who's a trauma expert, global speaker, a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist. He's Harvard educated, a father of 2 boys, author of several books, and his latest book, which we just loved, which is called To Be Loved. And it's your memoir about truth, trauma, and transformation. So welcome to the Back Fence, Frank.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Every time I hear the title to the book, To Be Loved, I know I do it all the time, but I can't help it. What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
I will sing at a drop of a hat. So
No, not for some.
In
No, not for
stereo,
some.
in stereo, no less.
That's
I
what I
love
think
it.
of.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
like,
true, though,
look,
to be loved.
It's a remarkable intro to you, Frank, that Nicola just read out. But there's so many roads to cut into trauma. And I thought how to construct this interview. I thought, really, we really must start with, because the book that we both read and love is really ultimately a reflection of your relationship with your daddy do. So,
Yeah.
look, to be honest with you, I felt it was good to start with. I know it's late at night there, but we're going to take you back, 6 years of therapy as a young boy, as your parents recognized you were playing with Barbies. Can you just enlighten us and just fill us in a little bit about that story?
Yeah, sure. It was a really difficult way to be a kid. I'll say that. As kids, you just are who you are naturally. And honestly, I just had curiosity. I didn't know what the heck it was. My cousin had a Barbie playhouse, and I had curiosity about it. And it was just natural intrigue and interest, right? Just me being me. That was the first time I felt shame because, Frankie, boys don't play with Barbie dolls. What are you doing? Like the instant shame that I felt around that. And, I don't know all of what else went into that decision. I know my parents reached out to my uncle, who was a doctor, the one I was named after. And they're like, what do we do? What do we do? He's not normal, And his suggestion was bring him into therapy. Because back then, being gay was a disorder. It really was. I had no sexual feelings. I was a kid who was 6 years old. It wasn't about sexual orientation. It was just like interest in that, And so it really was quickly, I learned I'm wrong. There's something wrong with me. I need to not be who I am. And I need to learn how to figure out how to get people to like me and love me. So from a very early age, I learned how to disconnect. I mean, grew up so dissociated, so disconnected from who I was. And I was constantly seeking the environment, like watching my brother, watching my uncles, like watching my dad. I have to be like that. I have to act like that. I have to say what they do. So it was what I knew, right? It was all I knew. And I think most gay people who grow up automatically disconnecting from their self in order to fit in. Even though the world is a lot different, it's kind of an automatic thing because you don't think, oh, I'm gay. You're like a kid. You're just being a kid. You know what I mean? So you just get these messages. And yeah, it was quite a long trajectory for me before I was able to kind of allow myself to be who I am in this world.
That is incredible, Frank. Can I ask you, so did that therapy as a young boy then, did that actually make it worse for you? Because
100%.
Yes.
That's a good question.
Oh my goodness, 100%. It made things so much worse. Now, let me say my parents were well-intended, which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
Like they're
It
like,
came
we
from
want to help
love.
Frankie. Right, it did come from love.
Yes.
They were well-intended. They wanted me to have a good life. So they did the best that they could. And again, it was a disorder to be gay. What was fascinating, and I write about this in the book, nobody said the word gay to my parents either. But it's like they went to couples therapy. They were supposed to go to couples therapy because there was a lot of physical and verbal abuse in my house, right? But their couples therapist said to my dad, what would it be like for you? Frankie's doing really well. He can stop treatment now. After 6 years, I stopped treatment because I acted like a normal boy, right? I did my homework. What if he became a hairdresser one day?
Yes,
And what the hell is that, like code word for gay back in the day, right?
That's true.
Wow.
What if you become a hairdresser? And my dad's like, well, I don't care if he becomes a hairdresser, I guess, as long as he's happy, Like it was kind of a strange thing. Nobody would say it, But yeah, no, it had a really bad effect on me. I didn't feel for a very long time.
Wow.
I didn't feel. I was in therapy for 11 years when I was in my residency, 5 times a week, and didn't cry once.
Oh, unbelievable.
Right? 11 years of therapy with not a one shed tear. So I learned how to suppress my emotions in a big way.
Well, I guess that therapy has been thrown out and those techniques out the window because
Yes.
it's just, thank goodness, and thank goodness you're around to turn things around too.
You know what I'm
That's
thinking? You know what? It's almost like, because you were hit a lot by your father, it's almost like
Yes.
he hit the feeling out of you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You were numb.
Yeah, totally.
To acknowledge that too, and people who do read your memoir, and you're very honest and open, and it really was quite a, I mean, they were saying traumatic childhood that you had when it is physical and verbal abuse, but you're saying you suppressed it, and then you ended up still carrying on, and then, being gay, but I guess you didn't sort of fully recognise it or allowed to, and then you married a gorgeous woman, Liz. Tell us about
He was
that.
a good friend, a really good friend.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's what I know in retrospect now. We were great friends from my perspective. She was in love with me. That was her issue. You don't marry a guy who's totally unavailable for no reason. Like, she had her own issues. She's not a lesbian. I think she's remarried and has children now, which I'm very happy for, But I did what I was supposed to do. I thought that was what love was. Like, we were friends. Like, I really liked her as a person, I really did.
Yeah.
I probably loved her as a person, not in love with her at all, and I went through all the steps. I remember, like, I was able to have sex, right? I could do that. Like, okay, check that off the box. It was kind of like that, The biggest piece that I remember, which was painful when I look back, was asking her to marry me. Like, I was so intellectual about it. I was like, okay, you got to buy a ring. Okay, you got to pick out a nice restaurant. Okay, you got to ask her these words and you got to say it this way. Okay, then you go out to dinner. And then, like, it was all like...
It was expected of you.
And textbook sort of stuff.
It was like checking, this is what you're supposed to do. There was not an ounce of feeling. Like, but now in retro, I'm like, would you marry me? Like, should be loaded with love. And there was none. It was just, I was just going through the motions.
And I tell you what, how many people now listening can relate to that as well, whether they were gay or not. Sort of
Isn't
thinking,
that the truth?
you should be marrying this person from this class or this person from this type of job there, and you do that. And
Go
you
through
don't
the
have
motions.
those feelings of, maybe just ripping their clothes off and just like whatever. But it's just sort of that real thing of going, this is what I should do, and I'll do it.
I've worked with so many couples over the year, gay and straight, right? Who will say, as they're kind of ending their relationship, like they decide to end, I knew this was wrong when I was walking down the aisle. I did it anyways. Do you know what I mean? Like, so many of us, we learn to disconnect from our intuition, from our gut, for all kinds of reasons, right? All kinds of reasons, not trusting. One of my biggest joys so far about the release of this book is the way people are relating all across the board. Like, these are universal themes that people go to. It's not specific to my life. And to have that kind of impact has really been remarkable.
You use the word intuition. It's funny, with all the interviews we've done, like vast majority of them, a lot of them mention the word intuition and what that is and what we hold and how we avoid that feeling.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing in your book about, particularly when the catalyst for change, once your marriage failed and you finally came out as gay and that was to be celebrated. But it was all about feeling, because you were talking previously about being like numb. You didn't feel. You didn't know what that was.
Totally.
And, it's like we have a belly brain, like a feeling brain, and we do ride over that a lot in life.
Yeah,
because it's easier,
We need to. I think it's more like survival than it's easy.
Correct. Yeah.
Honestly, I really do, because over and over and over again, when we're children and we're growing up in any level of dysfunction, doesn't matter what level of dysfunction it is, you have to choose your parents over you. Mm-hmm. You have to choose them over you in order to survive. You can't stay with your gut, with your intuition, because it's dangerous to not have that connection.
Yes.
So kids will choose the parent over themselves 100% of the time, and We do this all the time because we need to, whether it's a drunk parent or a depressed parent or a parent who's neglectful. It kind of doesn't matter. Parents who are fighting all the time. I need you more than I need me. And so we disconnect from ourselves in the service of survival. And then that sets up a pattern of disconnection.
That's so interesting. So really, most things, start off with those issues as a young child, because so many people sometimes going, I don't want to go back to all my childhood stuff. That was pretty good and whatever.
True.
And I can learn from here.
Yeah.
I don't have to dig deep. But do we really have to, Frank?
Yeah, we do. Or you can keep repeating these patterns because this is what ends up happening.
Yes,
You-
yes.
Yeah.
I say you repeat it, you repress it, or you repair it.
Wow.
Right? And it's your choice, right? And so what ends up happening is in an attempt to repair it, we seek out people that are familiar, right? Our wounds are looking for redemption. Our wounds are looking to get fixed. So we seek these people that are kind of upgraded versions of our parents. Oh, this one's going to love me. Oh, they're going to be there for me in a way I never got. And that's a failure to start with because they're not supposed to be that. Like there's an unrealistic expectation of a partner being the parent you never had. But if you
Wow. That's a big
Isn't
one.
it? Yes.
Wow.
And
It's
that's
a-
so true, isn't it? It's these
set up
unconscious
for
things.
failure.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're trying to heal our wounds in our relationship because when we're kids, we need those people for survival. But when we're older, we need to be able to manage ourselves and share our life with somebody, right? But when we seek out somebody else to be what we didn't get, you've changed the relationship in a way that's not healthy. It's an unrealistic expectation.
The interesting thing about trauma that blew me away in the book was, or one of your podcasts was, that 70% of people will endure trauma in their life. Where,
Yes.
like you were saying, a lot of people say, oh, no,
Yes.
trauma never affected me.
Right.
No,
Right.
because trauma in itself, the word frightens me. It's
Yes.
almost like
Well, I was just saying
an
now,
accident.
I
you
love
know?
it now that it's now becoming, it's more normalised, isn't it,
Yeah.
Frank, now? And I
Yeah.
love that with your book that you can talk about it. It used
Yep.
to be a real bit of a stigma, a bit of a shame.
So true.
Whereas it's sort of like, I think when you're chatting to Lewis Howes on his interview too, you
Yeah.
were sort of saying it's another word for trauma is it's like you're overwhelmed. Is it
Yes.
like,
100%.
See, I prefer that almost because trauma frightens me.
Right.
I think of
That's right.
surgery or an accident.
It's traumatic.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Does that make sense
Yes.
to you?
Yes, a
Yeah.
lot of people
Just
do have
traumatized
an
by the
aversion
word.
to
Yeah.
the word.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. Well,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, people have an aversion to the world.
Yeah.
I've opened a Trauma Informed Media, a production company in LA, right? And it's fascinating because we can't say the word trauma in any of the productions that we're doing.
Still,
No.
there you go.
I see
Incredible.
that. This is bizarre.
So what's your substitute? Is it overwhelming?
Overwhelmed.
Here's what we're
pretty.
doing. So you've got to come in through the back door. Do you know there's two shows that really make me think about this. Ted Lasso is one.
Yep.
Okay.
It's brilliant.
And the other one is The Bear. I don't know if you see The Bear or know The Bear. It's a restaurant. It's like a cooking show.
We have to
about all
watch
the-
that. I've heard
haven't-
about that,
I
Frank.
haven't.
It is
Yes.
so good, and it's all about all the cooks and the waiters and all the dysfunctional families that they come from.
Yes.
But it's about this restaurant.
Well,
You
throwing
understand?
knives. and-
Actually, I have
Yes,
seen it.
yeah. Losing
Right?
it.
Yeah.
Freaky.
Yeah.
Okay, no, the
That's
one.
right,
yeah.
and it's all
Yeah.
about dysfunctional families.
Yeah.
Same thing with Ted Lasso. Towards the end of the series, it's about soccer. We love to hear about soccer, but they did a brilliant job looking at the origin of everybody's reason for their dysfunction.
Yes.
Right?
So
And I think that's the way we have to do it, because just like you're saying, that word scares me. That's not me. It didn't. Men are like, I'm tough. Trauma doesn't happen to me. And oftentimes women, and these are generalizations, obviously, it's like, oh, not me, not me. Does that mean I'm weak? I'm afraid of it, right? Or some people have this like, I wasn't in war.
Yeah.
I didn't have
Yeah.
a car accident, so I don't have trauma. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
how do you start? Like, very simply, what's a starting point to acknowledge and create awareness around recognizing a trauma in your life that you might have been carrying that you're not aware of or you are aware of?
I always say thank your responses. I say get curious about your reactions and your responses, because that's what grabs people's attention. Yelling, drinking, exercising too much, overworking. Your responses are your road into your trauma, because those are all ways we try to protect ourselves. So, we'll look at your trauma. People can't do that because we suppress our trauma. That's what we do. It's look at your reactions and your responses. Like for me, I was way overdeveloped in the smart category. Like I was so driven to succeed, to be smart in hopes that my father would love me. But if I looked at the driven to success, that's a reaction that's rooted in trauma. It was my way to compensate, and so we've got to focus on the reactions and the responses first, because that opens the door to go to the deeper stuff.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
is
great.
just one, because
brilliant.
everybody can relate to that.
I love it.
And so
Right.
you get that, because I've heard that when it's hysterical, it's historical.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So,
yeah.
so when you do think that, gosh,
goodie.
I'm drinking every night and I'm doing this, and you sort of
Right.
you're numbing yourself out, but you sort of think, well, look, I'm kind of used to doing this, and I don't really want to change. It's a bit too hard, but obviously there must be a deep-seated thing.
But meantime, they're snapping at everyone.
Snapping
Yeah.
everyone else.
Right.
What is a
100%.
first port of call for somebody who mightn't be able to go to a therapist? You might be now aware of your responses, but what do you do?
Well, so this is my life's work right now. I'll tell you, it really is. Part of me is like, stay tuned. Here's my next book.
Yeah.
I really feel like I have this calling to bring trauma healing to the world. I don't know why, but I do. And I think there's not enough therapists in the world to help us heal this problem. I really don't. So I'm working on translating all the stuff in mental health to bring this to the general population, and I'm kind of like, that was one of the thank your trauma response, right?
It's brilliant.
Trust that you have what you need inside of you to heal, and you have the ability to create a safe relationship.
Wow,
right?
okay.
So they're the 4 T's. Do you just run through
yeah,
those 4 T's?
exactly right.
I just remember those from the book. So the
Exactly.
first one was thank you.
Thank
So-
your trauma responses.
Okay, so my reaction, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you
they're trying
for
to help
showing me
you.
that I've just gone, Nicola, yeah, whatever.
Exactly.
thank
Yeah,
you.
they're
Thank you.
trying to
Stop
help.
snapping, Georgie.
And then she
Still
goes,
love you.
she goes, and I go, thank you for bringing that to the fore.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Okay.
your responses, because they're trying to help.
It's
Right.
beautiful, really, isn't it?
It actually makes
That
it
they're
get
trying to
So
emotional.
beautiful. And what comes next? Let's go through
Yeah,
them again,
yeah.
because we're students.
I added a 5th one, by the way.
Oh,
I
yay!
There you go. Because this one was really important
Yeah.
to me, and it was kind of came from writing the book. So thank your trauma responses.
Yes.
Know that they're there to try to help protect you. Second is trust your inherent wisdom and your capacity to heal and create safety in relationship. Because safety is super important, right?
Tell me about the safe part of it. I'm a bit confused
because
there.
trauma is a violation of a relationship, and there's a lack of safety. And most people don't know that they have the intuition to choose well. They have an intuition to create safety, okay? Because they have ignored it. That guy's a jerk, but I didn't pay attention. So I say, trust your intuition and trust that you do have the capacity to choose safe connections.
Like your gut
Safe.
response again,
Safe
too.
connections is
listening to your gut.
Listen
Yeah.
to your gut, like
I'm
you're
thinking
saying.
something else with safe.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Safety is the opposite of trauma. And you have to have a level of safety.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful.
Okay,
Wow, that penny
you have
dropped.
to have a level of safety.
Takes
You
me a
have to
bit
have level
longer in my 60s for pennies to drop.
The next one I have is access the truth inside of you, because what ends up happening in trauma is that our truth gets distorted, ignored, and other people discount it. So you have to connect to the truth of your experience. This happened to me. This is real, no matter what anyone says or no matter what we do. Because when somebody says to you, that didn't happen, that's not true, all trauma has distorted beliefs. There's a distortion in the beliefs, there's a distortion in the responsibility. We often take responsibility for what happened to us. So accessing the truth is really listening to the part that holds the experience and validating that. Writing this book was my truth.
I was going to say that, accessing your
It
truth.
was my truth. And there are many people in my family that are fighting me around it. And that's okay. That's their reaction. This is my truth. So
How
we have
cool
to
is that you
I
can
know.
accept
And
that
you get to
with
that
a smile.
stage.
This is my, like you said to your mum, Dad hit me, but I love him. And then your
Yeah.
mother saw the light bulb went on and she went,
You got it.
"Oh, I failed you." You went, "No, you did. You were
Yeah.
passive. You did what you could at that time with the
Exactly.
tools you had on board." And it's like
Yeah.
calming it all down and
Yeah.
communicating.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Not
But you've got
swallowing
to
it
hold
down.
your truth. You've got to be able to hold your truth.
And that takes some time to do that, doesn't it? You know, and that can take a lifetime to do that. But
It's
let's
very
continue
true.
on with
Yeah.
this. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
The next is transformation.
Yeah.
And so there's two steps to transformation from my perspective. First is once the truth is known, then you need a corrective experience. The part of you that went through the trauma needs a corrective experience. They need to feel loved and seen and valued if they say, I'm unlovable, I'm no good, I'm not worth it. So there needs to be a corrective experience for the part of us that holds the trauma and holds the pain. Now, that can happen internally, that can happen with a therapist, or that can happen in a friendship. It's a relational repair, and it's corrective for what the part is holding. Because most parts hold, I'm no good, I'm unlovable. You know, relational trauma is a violation of love and connection. And so we have to give the part that holds the trauma a corrective experience.
Love that. Continue on.
Oh,
It's
amazing.
I know.
that's the big one for me. That just hit
You
home.
got it.
Oh.
That's
No,
right.
it really did. You know, I had a period in my life where I didn't think I was good enough. And
That's right.
that played out in
100%.
so many. I can look now in reflection,
Right.
in so many ways that played out.
Yeah.
And now I'm just fucking fabulous. No, but there's my
Right.
truth.
Just
No,
exists, yeah.
but I lived that, and
Yes.
that just resonated with me. What you were just saying.
Once you have a corrective experience, then you can release what you're holding. The truth has to be known. A corrective experience has to happen. Then letting it go is possible. Then that release is possible. That's the second step in transform. You
I
know,
think it
and
all
then
ultimately comes down to communicating.
internally.
Internal.
But
It's
you
your
just said
instincts.
it could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could, you know, a lot of us swallow it down, and by swallowing it down, it compacts and
Well,
oh,
here, I'm going to say it's more than communication, it's sharing the experience.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
want to stay with the story. only.
True, that's a good one. I
Yes,
love that
because you can
too.
get stuck in the mud, can't you?
Absolutely,
And you're just
Yeah.
stuck
It's
there.
repetitive. Well
and that's
said.
not going to help being stuck
Yep.
in the mud. Whereas,
Sharing the experience makes sense.
Yeah.
but it's that inner
Sharing the
truth
experience.
that you're doing. Continue on. I'm just loving
Me too.
your words of the tease.
Once we've done the transformation, once we've released what we've carried, then you can take back your power. Then you're in the world in a different way. Then take back your power. And in taking back your power, you make decisions and choices from a different place, because you're not making decisions from a trauma redemption place. You're not trying to fix your trauma. You're being an adult in the world, right? And you make different choices in relationships. You make different choices in jobs. And here's where you can choose forgiveness or not. because it's a choice, right? But I always say forgiveness happens after healing, not before healing. And you could choose to release what you're carrying around the person who harmed you. And this is very hard for people because they think it means you condone it. And oftentimes people are pushed to forgive too quickly. It's like, no, no, no. Heal first. And if you choose to forgive, it's ultimate freedom for you because you no longer carry anger or resentment or hurt about the other person. See, healing trauma releases what you carry. Forgiveness releases what you carry about the other person. And it's for you, it's not for them.
Always, always. You know, you've got to do the work, but is it that hard to do the work, Frank?
Yeah, it depends how many times this has happened. It depends on what kind of resources you have, what kind of love and connection you have in your life. Some people can move through this pretty quickly, and other people, it takes a really long time. So there's a lot of factors. I always think about the word resilience. You know, what in the heck does that word really mean? Everybody says resilience, but I don't think we know what is required for resilience. I have resilience for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I've always tried to make myself better my whole life. You know, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, thank goodness for you, and thank goodness that you're spreading the word, and also that you had the courage to share your personal memoir, you know, which is courageous to do that. Anyone here, there's no holding back on this book as well. There's a few sort of like moments I was going, woo, Frank.
Totally. It was to the core.
You know, which is great and a bit saucy, and you married another man, and then it ended up you were like the mum. Is it? That's right, and he was like the dad in your, you know, growing up, and then it took third time lucky. Yeah,
It's very courageous.
totally. My relationship with my wife, I was controlling and she was passive. And then my first relationship with a man, I was passive and he was controlling. Like I was trying it all out.
Wow.
And it wasn't working.
Incredible.
Hey, you gave it a shot though, didn't you? You know, so
I was running out of options. That's what I was saying.
you know, we all know people in the world. You know, we're all students of life there. But if you don't, I suppose if you just continue on not wanting to do the work there, I guess that's just sort of the way sometimes when it makes life a bit harder along the way.
You know what? I think people learn more slowly in the school of life. Because if you keep picking jerks and you're in the fifth one, eventually you're going to learn, right? So
true.
I think sometimes we learn more slowly if we don't want to do the work.
Yes.
And sometimes if we're willing and open to get help, it can be a quicker journey versus not doing it.
Frank, human beings have the most remarkable capacity to heal, and I think anybody listening right now who feels overwhelmed, remember that. Don't ever forget that. We really
100%.
truly, it's part of, you know, like we've got an arm and a leg. We can, something else we can do. We can cope. We can eventually heal. Just believe, you know. And the other thing at the end of believe is disease. If we hold on to stuff, you can make yourself sick physically. And people forget that too. So you must
100%.
release to heal.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
You're a doctor and you're also a psychiatrist. I mean, you know all about that.
That's right. Yeah, most of our inflammatory related diseases are rooted in unprocessed emotion. Rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, those are all undigested trauma that's stuck in the body.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? When they say,
terrifying.
what is it? Body keeps the score. And that's an example of that, isn't it? Because what we even don't want to acknowledge and thinking everything is fine, it literally eats us inside, you know.
Yes.
So that's just a way it does hold on. And, you know, you feel it. I think we've all had that, or, you know, you feel the pain. And, you know, I've had that even when the loss of a dog, and when they go, it's heartache, I've actually had like a pain in the chest.
Yeah.
100%. I didn't know that was possible.
We disconnect the head to the body. It's like, hey, it's all one.
Yeah, but
Hello.
it's such a positive message though, Frank, that literally it's now, as we're saying, the trauma, it's no stigma about it, whether you say it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much now, and the earlier you learn and to identify things, the better. So it's great
true.
for younger people, whereas, Di's thrilled because I've just turned 60 myself. So, yahoo!
Beautiful. Yay.
And
That's awesome.
and feeling good. I tell you what, I just absolutely love it. I
Right.
really do. But it's
That's
just, I feel so happy that now we can just talk so much openly about
It's
it.
true.
And for our kids and younger generation there, we might be able to just fix up those little things a bit earlier than making some of the same mistakes that we had.
Be open. As Frank's just said, my book's all about, hey, this is my truth. Here it is.
Yes, yeah.
All of you live your truth. What are you afraid of?
And you can heal, like you said before.
Yes.
Healing is possible. That was one of the main reasons I wrote this book, is to let people know trauma is universal and so is healing.
Wow, that's so good. And we know, and sadly, we were sort of saying is your responses, and then when the very end of the line is suicide, and sadly we all know people that it happens to, and it happens sadly every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big question there, but it's one of those things. Do you say that's the ultimate protection of feeling the pain?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If you don't address the pain or you don't get the help, that's the ultimate helper, is taking you out of the experience, right?
Yes,
So
yes, yeah.
addressing the pain really does minimize the need for suicide to do it.
Yeah.
And you were close at one stage, Frank, and by God, you got yourself out.
Yeah, and you can say that yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, that's exactly right. Because for me, the most painful thing really was acting in certain ways like my father to my kids. It's like doing the things that was done to me was where I drew the line. It's like, I cannot do this. I would rather be dead than to perpetuate this trauma. That's part of what motivated me to work so hard to heal.
How fabulous. You turned that around.
You've turned that around. And I like talk about open. He's now written a memoir that's, a global sensation. And,
so many afraid to speak it, let alone write it.
Yes.
Now you're a global speaker about it. You wrote about it. How healthy do you feel today, sitting there in front of us now? Like, seriously.
Well, look at his
Obviously,
skin. Look at
we're
his
never
skin,
100%,
Dodie.
but
Look
we're
at him.
99%, aren't
He's
we?
61. He's got, with the really rosy cheeks. And we actually have to ask about your skincare, Frank, I think, too.
People are like, why you look so young? You look so young.
Yeah.
And I said, it's because I've done so much healing.
Yep, I believe that.
That's
See?
it. Love that.
Absolutely your
I
truth.
think it's because I've released so much that doesn't belong to me, that was forced upon me, and I really do. I think somebody said, forget Botox, buy the book, right?
That's a
Right?
good one. That is
Isn't that great? Isn't that great?
That is brilliant.
It's
That
true.
is exactly. That's the byline, isn't it? That is
So-
absolutely brilliant.
Honestly.
Now, I just saw with your Instagram too, and because we find with all the people we've chat to, a theme that we've had is people pleasing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I know you've posted. What's your views on what is people pleasing and what's wrong with it, and why do we do it?
It's one of our main protectors.
Okay.
One of our main protectors. It's one of those responses to think. It's a trauma response.
How's that? It's a
trauma
trauma
response.
response. People pleasing.
It is. Because if I take care of you, then maybe I'll get my needs met. If I take care of you, then I don't have to focus on my pain. Like, there's many reasons why focusing on the other is safer, and it keeps us away from our own pain, right? It's a big protective response. And usually it doesn't work very well, because then we end up abandoning ourselves.
Which you did as a young boy.
Totally,
Yeah.
100%. So it works for a short term, but it's not a long-term solution at all.
No. Oh, isn't it interesting? It sort of comes back to sort of like with the basics too. It's ultimately it all comes from within, isn't it? Your inner
100%.
truth and having the courage and the confidence to speak up. And, it's hard when you've been conditioned this way, and that when people from different, religions, races, across the world. But it's that universal thing of to be loved. And I love it, Frank, that you're saying love heals trauma as well. So it's beautiful.
And this is from my other book, Transcending Trauma, is trauma blocks love.
Yes.
Love heals trauma.
I love.
That-
Say
so,
that
yeah,
again.
say that
Say
again.
it again, Frank.
Trauma blocks love,
Yep.
and love heals trauma.
Heals trauma.
Whoa, bravo to that as well.
It really sums up everything. And I'll tell you
Right?
something.
Doesn't
and
it?
I
Does.
hope those listening that are saying, well, they don't understand, my trauma was worse or whatever. There's every human being, I'm going to repeat, has the capacity to heal.
Yes.
So don't think you're alone with your issue, whatever that may be.
Because trauma did happen in isolation.
Yes.
And that connection is the antidote. So if you're alone, reach out.
Right.
Right? If you're alone, reach out. Because love and connection heal trauma. I mean, that is what heals trauma, is love and connection. It really does. That is the opposite of what trauma is.
It's beautiful connection, because a lot of people feel, especially when you are in the lowest points, you do want to disconnect. You want to stay by yourself because that's when you're safe and you don't
Lick
want
your
to.
wounds.
Yes. And I guess there's a time for that you do need to be still and you need to sit in it. But it is, healing
Here's the
within.
difference.
Yes.
There's a way to be alone and be with your experience, not in it.
Oh, how? How's that? How do we
Because
do
when
that?
we slip into reliving, we're reinforcing the trauma.
Right.
So this is what meditation is.
Right.
This is what being with is. Writing. I'm doing writing courses now as a way of healing. So when you're writing about it, you're with it. When you're taken over by it, you relive it, right? So there's a way when you're doing meditation, you're with it, right? When you're sharing it with a friend, you're with it. So there's a way to be with it. And even if you're alone, you be with it instead of in it.
That is excellent.
And I love when you said also today, which really sunk deep with me, was share the experience rather than just the fluffy words. Share your experience.
Right.
Then the story, you can keep saying, I was worked over and I was just like, you're the victim. Well, ultimately, then it still is. You can share the experience there without actually that incident. It's wonderful. It's so
I've learned
healthy.
So much today.
I know, it's just
You've
so healthy.
broken down that scary word of trauma that really was for me.
That's
Yes,
right.
yeah, and a lot of people that way, So, that's why I think it's so great talking about it. And I know even my son, who's in his 20s, he was saying, I can't wait to hear this one, because a lot of younger people are really aware of this and want to know more.
Thank
so
God.
and so he was going, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
And I wish I
years
heard it when
ago,
I
it'd be
was
like
younger.
it was fluff, and I hate using the word, but it's true. Everyone understands the term woo woo,
Yes.
and it's not
Yeah.
anymore.
No.
It's like listen to it. If it resonates, great. Talk about it, share it.
And can I ask
Essential.
also about, you mentioned dreams as well. What's the significance with that?
When I was in my residency training program, we did a lot of work on dream analysis. And I don't think it's important to figure out the meaning of the dream.
Right.
Personally, I think dreams are a communication. And I think we take them as information from parts of us that are buried. Like
that are buried.
what? It's a communication of sorts. So it might be in metaphor, because it might not be a direct communication, but I think it's a communication from our internal world of what we're struggling with, what we need to listen to better, what messages we need to hear from. So it's always for me, it's a communication of a part through a dream.
And it's
That's
funny.
fascinating.
When we're not open to listening,
Yeah.
then parts need to communicate at night through dreams.
Wow.
And someone
That's
said the other day,
amazing.
it was Annabelle Abbs, a girl we just interviewed, has a book called Sleepless. And she said, when you go to sleep, your brain's still awake and alert.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'd never acknowledged that before. I was like, whoa.
And that's really listening to like those inner messages. And if you want to block out everything else, that's the inside coming out a bit too. Even if you don't understand it. It's
Hearts
wonderful.
are like, finally, you're not distracted. Finally, I have space to communicate.
Honestly, you are a gem, Frank. You're absolutely gem. Are you coming out to Sydney? Because we want to get you out. Di wants to get you out on the surfboard and, come up to Palm Beach and hang out with us. And, any plans of coming out?
It's interesting. I've got a ton of travel coming up and a lot of international travel, but I haven't. Nobody's asked me to come
We're
to Australia.
We have. Well, here is a formal one there. Di and I share a back fence, hence the name Over the Back Fence. We're all about community, learning, leaning on one another, learning and loving, and spreading the word too. So we're really honoured to have you, and we would love you to come out. And we're giving a first an invitation. There's a bed at Palm Beach for you.
Got a bed there.
There's a couple for the kids and your handsome husband.
I'm great at organising a party.
Well, we haven't, so we'd love you to come out, and we truly would, Frank. And we've got a couple of our signature questions that we'd love to ask you. And so, Di, what do you think about talking about the fence? So
I'm dying to hear what Frank says to this one. If you had the opportunity of popping down to our back fence and you had a choice of asking anybody in the world to join you, who would that be and why?
My husband.
Who you see every day.
No, he never travels with me. He's such a homebody, and he takes care of the kids. And I travel all over the world, and I would love to have him join me on some of these travels. So
we might get two surfboards.
What's your husband's name, Frank?
Michael.
Well, okay, Michael. Well, there's an invitation for you, Michael. I think you'll love it.
You'll love palming.
And your two kids there. But
next question.
And look, this excites me, this question with you, with your wisdom and what you're like. But what advice would you give to your old 20-year-old Frank, to your 20-year-old self?
I know.
That's so painful.
Wow. Sorry, I'm taking you right back.
Yeah, I can feel it as you say it, you know. Like, I would say to him, this pain isn't yours, and you will have the ability to let it go and be your authentic self.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that.
See?
That's huge, and that's come from within.
Yeah, he was all full of angst and lost, and it was not his, and it was not his.
Not his. That's a really comforting thing to hear.
You know what, Frank?
too.
I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
Just as a human. Like, I'm going to get
Thank
teary. But I'm so proud of you. You've come so far. And, a lot of us sit in that and live and die with it. You've come out the other side and you're shining.
Yeah, shining and sharing.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say,
beautiful.
Just how it's just a great. It was such a great experience for both of us reading that book and experiencing your journey. I feel like I was with you on that journey.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Yeah,
I mean it.
Yeah, and who would have known that 20-year-old Frank has made Di in Sydney, Australia cry? All those years later, it takes her a bit to cry too. But really, so and how we can all relate. We're all human beings, whether they're women, men, whatever country you're from, it doesn't matter. And we all want to make the most of living and on planet Earth. And you certainly are helping us, and healing is just wonderful. And that's a really positive, great message.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much. We can't wait for when you do come and visit us in Sydney, Australia. We're going to be on to that as well, and we hope everybody here listening has got something out of it, like we sure have. We really have. Thank you for listening, everybody. And Frank, we love people to give us a bit of rating and reviews. We hope you might even do that yourself. But there's 5 stars, but sometimes Di likes to shoot for the stars. Now, what do you think? We've had Dr. Frank Anderson here, who's a global leader in trauma expert. Well, how many stars, Di?
I think Frank mentioned he was 61, and I'm so proud of him. He's such a great place at 61. So what about 61 out of 5?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah?
61, and I haven't even made it yet. So to ask you what it's like. It still make me feel like a spring chick.
Thanks, Frank, for joining us today.
Thanks so much, and everybody listening will be in your
rewarding.
ears on Monday. Bye. Ciao, ciao.